For years, the Great Lakes have been a place for vacationers to bring their families and fisheries to make a living. No other state in the country is surrounded by its own supply of fresh water. The lakes are part of what makes Michigan so special. Not only do they provide a source of natural beauty, but they contribute greatly to the economy. The sport fishing industry alone brings in approximately $7 billion annually. This number doesn't include the money made by the thriving tourism industry or the 4 million recreational boats housed in the Great Lakes states. For these reasons, protecting the lakes has always been a priority for Michigan residents.
Well, invasive species, when they move into an area, if they are successful, and of course some move in and just die out because they can't live in that place, but if they're successful, then they have food and the right temperature conditions and other environmental conditions that they can survive, and they usually have an advantage. Because they're in an area that's new, there may not be any other organisms that eat them or kill them, and that may give them an advantage over native plants or animals which are in balance with certain other plants or animals that would feed on them. And when you have that kind of imbalance, something comes in that doesn't have to compete in the same way, it tends to come in and take over and dominate. The disadvantages of invasive species include pushing out species that may be more beneficial, and secondly, disrupting the whole food pyramid in an ecosystem, putting it in some kind of imbalance for a significant amount of time that will disturb not just one other species, but maybe dozens of other species. And we see the same thing over and over and over again in many cases where invasive species come in. They so disrupt an ecosystem that we end up with far less diversity, far less benefit to wildlife, and indirectly, of course, it affects us.
At the moment, Asian carp are seen as the most threatening species. They have not yet completely invaded the Great Lakes, but if nothing is done to stop them, they will quickly establish a home there. The fish can weigh up to 100 pounds, leap 8 feet out of water, and consume up to 40% of their body weight daily. Once established, they threaten to harm the economy, the environment, and human health. Though Asian carp are the center of public attention, they are not the only risks to the Great Lakes ecosystem. Sea lampreys attach themselves to passing fish and use their sharp teeth to dig in until they reach blood and body fluids. An average lamprey can eat up to 40 pounds of fish over the course of its life. Also problematic are zebra mussels and their cousin the quagga mussel. These invasive nuisances have caused massive botulism outbreaks in birds, and their tendency to conglomerate ruins boats and clogs important pipelines, such as those that lead to factories and power plants. Many people suggest that the invasive species should be dealt with in a manner that minimizes the negative impacts on other native species and the environment. Methods that drastically change the environment in a short period of time are fast and thorough. However, the point of getting rid of the species is to save the environment from their harmful effects. It makes no sense to destroy the environment in order to save it. Fishing with pheromones is one way to rid the lakes of the invasive species without harming the environment or other species. Pheromones are chemicals that animals release in order to influence others of the same species to act a certain way. Oftentimes, pheromones are used to attract members of the opposite sex. However, fishers can use them as bait. By releasing pheromones into the water before pulling in their nets, fishers can increase the amount of fish they catch. Catching more fish is especially important with Asian carp because, unlike other fish, they can reproduce multiple times a year. If the population isn't monitored carefully, it could easily get out of control. The same method also works on sea lampreys. The pheromone 3K-PCS can be used to lure sea lampreys into traps and nets. Studies performed by Michigan State University show that lamprey traps that have been tagged with pheromones catch up to 50% more than traps without pheromones. In general, excessive fishing and trapping is a positive way to remove the invasive species from our lakes. The method not only protects other species and the environment from the negative effects that come with many other methods, but it also encourages commercial fishing, which is good for the economy. Barriers can also be used to decrease the amount of invasive species in the Great Lakes. There are several forms of barriers, both physical and non-physical, that are being put into use to defend our lakes. Physical cement barriers or locks can be used to seal canals to prevent invasive species from entering. At the moment, these barriers are especially effective against Asian carp, because despite being found in several of the Great Lakes, the species has not yet established a population there. Keeping them out of the lakes is the #1 priority. Because these barriers are likely to be a permanent fixture, they provide long-term protection from invasive species. Non-physical barriers are also being used to combat the spread of invasive species. These barriers are beneficial in more ways than one. Unlike many physical barriers, they do not impede ships that are passing through the area. They can also be created to be selective for certain species and do not pose a threat to humans or other animals. Bubble barriers and acoustic barriers are two commonly used non-physical types of barriers. Sound barriers are effective because different types of fish are sensitive to different sound levels. For example, through testing it has been determined that the Asian carp are highly sensitive to sound. Barriers that emit sound at the right frequency can prevent Asian carp from entering a certain area. When placed at an entrance to lakes, the sound barriers can deter the fish from entering. Bubble curtains can be used in a similar way. Sound is refracted into the bubble curtain, creating a wall of sound. The fish refuse to swim through the bubble curtain, so the wall can be used to guide the fish in a desired direction. While zebra mussels are not as easily eliminated, precautionary measures can be used to stop their spread. Fishing for the mussels is impossible, but emptying ballast waters from boats and cleaning all recreational equipment can make an impact on their population and stop their spread.
For a certain percentage of boats that may be deemed a higher risk of spread if they have mussels attached or something like that, they'll go through a decontamination process where we use hot water around 140 degrees to kill the zebra mussels and to decontaminate that watercraft. And then they'll switch to a high pressure to blast zebra mussels and any vegetation or anything like that that might be stuck to the watercraft.
Also proposed are some methods which may have adverse effects on the environment. One could assert that these potential effects are a necessary evil to prevent the ultimate destruction of the Great Lakes as we know them. Chemical treatment is one such method. Nicholas Popoff, an agent of the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Michigan, says that chemical treatments are used effectively in targeted applications, particularly with sea lamprey. One of the chemicals used is the general pesticide rotenone, though its use is being phased out in favor of species-specific pesticides including 3-trifluoromethyl-4-nitrophenol, or TFM, and granular balicide. These particular chemicals are deployed in river tributaries to target sea lamprey larvae and pose little to no hazard to humans or other species. Granular balicide, though originally intended to kill mollusks such as the zebra mussel, is often used as an additive to TFM, and together they have been shown not to be carcinogenic, mutagenic, or persistent in the environment. That is, they aren't unhealthy and they break down naturally. Electrical barriers have also been proposed to prevent invasive species, specifically Asian carp, from entering the Great Lakes. These barriers run an electric current through the water to deter fish from traveling through it. This is done by laying cables at the bottom of the water embedded in the bedrock. A current is then run through these cables to deliver a non-fatal shock to anything swimming through. Upon entering the electric field, fish feel a negative sensation that steers them away. As they continue to swim forward, the sensation grows stronger, eventually numbing them and preventing further motion. Some are concerned that these barriers are a risk to humans, animals, or other fish species, but the current running through the water is not strong enough to kill the fish, much less a person. Nevertheless, cautionary signs are posted around electric barriers to warn of the potential danger. While it isn't yet clear which method is most effective, it is clear that action must be taken soon. Many invasive species are already in the Great Lakes and Asian carp are at the door. The Great Lakes are a resource of great economic importance and unbounded natural beauty, and it is imperative that we do everything in our power to protect them.